All right, well, here we go. High probability selling. Now, it's based on the parable that Jesus gave, commonly referred to as the parable of the sower. In Matthew 13, it says Jesus is speaking rather, he says, "Behold, a sower went out to sow." And what's interesting is, he said, some of the seed fell by the wayside, and the birds came and devoured them. Now, when he talks about the wayside, that's the pathway. That was never meant to be worked. It was never cultivated. It was never developed, and so forth. And that's why the birds came there. And these are the kind of prospects that you should avoid. They're rather obvious. They have no need for your product. They have no need for your service. And you think, well, maybe this one does. I'll call on everybody and I'll find some of them. Well, you can do that, and I understand that mentality. I've done that, in fact. I remember when I sold copiers, they never told us to, profile a sort of a target type of prospect. So we went after everybody that could possibly use a copier. And then when I started my publishing business back in 1988, we started selling to bookstores, and we called. I remember we hired a few people and divided the country into basically 4 regions: Northwest, Southwest, Southeast, and Northeast. And I signed an agent, if you will, over each of those territories, and we got on the phones and we started calling bookstores all across the country. We called every single bookstore in there, and we picked up thousands of clients over the years, and we grew the business. But what happened was, because I wasn't discerning the right kind of prospects. First of all, I had a lot of people, that didn't buy. They were definitely hard ground. But I also had some that did buy that I wish they didn't. Because I remember I got to a place where I had, I'm trying to remember now, I think it was, 1,000 or 1,500 bookstores or whatever it was that owed me money, had sold the books, and spent the money they got from the sale of the books. Instead of paying me the bill, they paid their light bill or whatever they did. It wasn't a very happy experience, to be sure. So I want to tell you, you want to look out for something that's kind of obvious. These are not good clients. And the reason why people call on them a lot of times is sometimes they have these metrics. Their company wants them to make X number of calls to get X number of appointments and so forth. And I understand that. And sometimes you can't weed them out. It depends. But sometimes you can say, wait a minute, I know this is a wasted call. And if you can avoid that, not call that, you're smart. Sure, there may be a kernel of opportunity here and there, but it's not a good place to spend your efforts. Now, secondly, he says, now some fell on stony places where they did not have much earth, and they immediately sprang up because they had no depth of earth. But when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. See, they were challenged, these people with the stony ground heart. And by the way, that ground there, I've seen that kind of ground. And can you imagine trying to plant in that? Now, sure, there's grass growing in places, and you can actually get some kind of result from there, but it's certainly not ideal or preferable. So, how do you identify these people? Well, if you're marketing, one of the things you can do to help you weed these out, so to speak, is these people have commitment issues. Like they're happy to say, "Hey, I'm interested." Sure, yeah. But when you try to get to the level of any kind of commitment, they at all, when they're challenged at all, when somebody challenges them on their thinking process, because they have no commitment, because they have no root, there's no investment, if you will, they go away. So, for example, in the marketing world, very smart people will say, I'll tell you what, because I have a sales process that involves the next step, making, having an appointment or spending 30 minutes or an hour with somebody, I want to make sure that I'm not wasting my time. So I'm going to charge them something. $5, $10, some minimal amount to make some minimal investment. Because if they're not prepared to do that, if they're not prepared to make any kind of investment, well, they're probably not the right kinds. If they can't make a commitment on $5 or $10, they're probably not going to make a commitment on something bigger. So you can filter those out. Now, bear in mind, again, here's where people get stuck. I've been stuck there. I understand this. See, some people see the rocks. Other people see the grass. I see the grass. But the problem is, the rocks are still there. So you got to be careful not to get involved with those rocky soil type of clients. They're not good for you. You can get some business, but I'm telling you, it's more trouble than it's worth. So you say, how do I weed these people out, these opportunities out? So the whole premise of this high probability selling is not necessarily that you can prospect better. It's so that after your initial prospecting, you don't invest any more time if they're not a high probability prospect. So, when you do a direct mail piece, people try to target a certain zip code or a certain type of business or industry and so forth. That's about as far as you can go. But when you have that initial face-to-face or over-the-phone conversation, then you can weed them out a little bit further. But what I'm trying to do here is eliminate, I call these people fickle. I want to eliminate these fickle people. They can't make a commitment. So as early on as possible, I'm going to eliminate that. If they can't make a commitment of some sort, I'm probably going to move on. Even though there are some opportunities there. Okay, the pain of it, the difficulty of removing the rocks, removing the hard places, and digging up that ground, is better spent that time on good ground. Now, there's a third type. You might remember this. It's thorny ground. These people have distraction issues. The Bible says, and some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprang up and choked them. And so I talk about, number one, preferably you want to avoid them altogether. You just like, I don't want to work a field full of thorns and weeds and all that kind of stuff. If I can help it, I'm going to avoid that. But a lot of times you can't tell that because they look like a good prospect from a distance, the wheat and the tares, for example. They look like they're a good prospect. But when you get up close to them, you realize, there's some issues here. So there is a process that you can remove the weeds before planting the seeds. But what you see is, in practice, is you find a prospect, for example. Now you're engaged in a conversation. This is sort of like a qualifying conversation. And you realize, man, they got so much going on in their world right now. This is not a good time for me to bring my product or my service or my ideas to the forefront. And if you can determine that, then it's probably best to move on. They're not a high probability sale. Now, if the problems that they're all distracted with are the problems that you solve, well, that's a whole different story. You can help them. But if they got, hey, we're moving our business, or we're relocating to Kansas, or I know, why would you do that? I say that to kid my friend Tim Nicholson. But if they've got some major things going on, you say, even if I do get a commitment from them, it will probably be a minor commitment. By that I mean it'd be a small order or something that may not fully satisfy them nor fully satisfy us, frankly. So you want to make sure that where possible, if you identify this as a highly conflicted, highly distracted prospect, the sooner you discern that, the better. Even though, again, I stress this, even though it is possible to get a sale or an opportunity out of them, okay? But it's just not a good place. You're going to get cut up with those thorns, no likely. And as you can see from all three types of soil here so far, any one of them is capable of producing a result. But it's not really worth the wear and tear on the chicken. Finally, you have good ground. These people are ready to act. The Bible says, but others fell on good ground and yielded a crop, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. These are your target. These are your ideal customers. But what do they look like? See, you want to plant your seed in good ground. So the best thing to do is to look at your existing customers so far and develop a profile on them. What size of business are they? What part of town are they in? What zip code, if that matters? It depends. Are they in a certain part of the nation? Are they a certain type of, are they a certain mindset? Are they conservative or liberal, or does that even matter? Is there certain factors, are there certain factors that really make up your more ideal? And I'm going to tell you right now, when you choose good ground, you will be missing some opportunities that are in the stony ground. I've converted stony ground into sales. Tough, hard to do and hard to keep, but I've done it. But it wasn't a good investment of time, but I didn't know it at the time. I've got the ones that are the thorny ground, distracted, and was able to wrestle with that until we got a deal. It wasn't easy, and I got those thorns and the cuts, if you will, to bear that out. I've even got some out of the hard ground eventually by working and digging up the ground, softening it up and doing everything. Because when I was younger in sales, I went after everybody because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. That's what they taught me, so that's what I did. But the good ground are really where you need to invest your time. You have to be willing to accept the fact that when you go after good ground, you are leaving some opportunities. They're not great, but you're leaving them behind in the shallow, thorny, and hard ground. Now, so once you understand that, you say, okay, well, how does this work out? Well, as you can see, we're going to imagine that there were 100 seeds thrown on each of the 4 different kinds of soil. So if that's the case, and only the good ground got a harvest, because the first 3 didn't get anything, 17% of the seeds produced 84% of the harvest. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, if each of them got 100, didn't 25% of them get that? No, 25% of the seed got 100% of the harvest. Okay, because all the harvest came out of the good ground. However, if you want to understand the Pareto principle a little bit, this is the 80-20 rule. This is pretty close to the 80-20 rule, and this is probably more accurate of an experience. But you take the 60-fold and the 100-fold, you're assuming that the 100 seeds that were in the good ground for mathematical purposes were divided up evenly. Some that produced 30, some 60, and some 100. If that's the case, the 60-fold and 100-fold produced 84% of the harvest. That's my point. And that came from 17% of the seeds. In other words, 66 seeds out of a total of 400 is roughly 17%. So that's phenomenal. Now, how do you do that? Again, as I say, you profile them as accurately as you can, and to the degree that you can do this well, you're really going to get a good harvest. Now, so what happened is, if you look at this, 400 random seeds just thrown anywhere brought in 6,280 seeds, or call it dollars for argument's sake, okay? You think, well, that's a good return. Well, it is. But if you took those same 400 seeds and you planted them in the good ground and actually targeted them to the 60-fold and 100-fold clients, they would have brought in $32,000 or 32,000 seeds. Okay, and by the way, that's just a little over 5 times the result that you get when you just sort of hit everybody. So learn to profile your target customers and go after them, and you pick your most likely ones and say, you know what, and by the way, you do it not only by their demographic, but their need potential. What is the challenge or circumstance that they're in the middle of right now when they made that buying decision that was a clue? Were they running out of something? Were they expanding? What was the need that they were experiencing? Because in your marketing, you can then look for people who raise their hand and indicate, yeah, I have that need. So you want to be able to do that and think, if I can identify the people that had the same need that my clients had at the time that they purchased, I'm going to be planting my seed in good ground. Now, you may market to the whole field, right, to all 400 seeds, if you will, but in terms of what you work, in terms of what you spend effort and time in, you're only going to go after the good ground. You're going to go after those. So you're going to weed them out by saying, who has this problem? And they're going to raise their hand. You're going to weed them out by saying, okay, well, if you want my report, not a free report, or you want this download, or you want this, my book, I'll send it to you, cover my shipping and handling or whatever, just raise your hand, pay $5, $10, whatever it is. And if they do that, they're at least somewhat seriously interested. If they don't, their level of interest is really low. I've got so much more detail on the subject that I'd love you to have. I mean, this is really just to introduce you to some biblical patterns that can truly help you multiply your sales without you having to work any harder. In fact, if you want to go deeper and change your life, build your business, grow your sales, improve your revenues significantly, I'm inviting you to enjoy a complimentary 1-hour in-depth lesson that reveals the 7 ancient paths that are found in the Moses Blueprint for success in sales and business. And on those paths, you'll learn about the Moses questioning strategy, the negotiating secrets of Paul, the easy close sales process, and a whole lot more. So if you'd like to learn that and see how can you apply God's Word and specifically the Moses Blueprint to your career and to your business, I invite you right now, scroll down. You can watch a short video that's going to show you what you're going to learn, and then press the green button here to access the blueprint and learn all about it. All right, friends, thank you so much. God bless you. You're going to love it.